Aitareya-Āraṇyaka, first Aranyaka, first adhyaya, first Kanda. Now follows the Mahavrata ceremony. After having killed Vrita, Indra became great. When he became great, then there was the Mahavrata, the great work. This is why the Mahavrata ceremony is called Mahavrata. Some people say, let the priest make 2 recitations with the offering of the ajna, ghee, on that day. But the right thing is 1. He who desires prosperity should use the hymn Pravo Devaya-Āraṇyaka. He who desires increase should use the hymn Viso Viso Atihitam. The people visa indeed or increase, and therefore he, the sacrificer, becomes increased. But someday there is the word atithim in that hymn, which means a guest or stranger asking for food. Let him not therefore take that hymn. Verily the atithi, stranger, is able to go begging. No, he said, let him take that hymn. For he who follows the good road and obtains distinction, he is an atithi, guest. They do not consider him who is not so worthy to be called an atithi, guest. Therefore, let him by all means take that hymn. If he takes that hymn, let him place the second trishch Anganma Vritrahantamam. We came near to the victorious first. For people worship the whole year performing the Gavamanya sacrifice. Wishing for this day, the last but one, they do come near. The next following 3 trishas begin with an Anushtubh. Now Brahman is Gayatri, speech is Anushtubh. He thus joins speech with Brahman. He who desires glory should use the hymn Abhodai Agni Samidha Jananam. He who desires offspring and cattle should use the hymn Hota Jananishta Jetana. Second Kanda. He who desires proper food should use the hymn Agnim Naro Didihitbi. Verily, Agni, fire, is the eater of food. In the other recitations accompanying the offerings of Agya, where Agni is likewise mentioned, the worshippers come more slowly near to Agni, because the name of Agni does not stand at the beginning of the hymn. But here, a worshipper obtains proper food at once. He strikes down evil at once. Through the words occurring in the second foot of the first verse, Hasta Jyoti Janayanta, they caused the birth of Agni by moving their arms. The hymn becomes endowed with the word birth. Verily, the sacrificer is born from this day of the sacrifice, and therefore the hymn is endowed with the word birth. There are 4 metrical feet in the Trishtubh verses of the hymn. Verily, cattle have 4 feet, therefore they serve for the gaining of cattle. There are 3 metrical feet in the Viraj verses of this hymn. Verily, 3 are these threefold worlds, therefore they serve for the conquest of the worlds. These, the Trishtubh and Viraj verses of the hymn, form 2 meters which form a support. Pratishta. Verily, man is supported by 2 feet, cattle by 4 feet. Therefore, this hymn places the sacrificer who stands on 2 feet among cattle which stand on 4. By saying them straight on, there are 25 verses in this hymn. Man also consists of 25. There are 10 fingers on his hands, 10 toes on his feet, 2 legs, 2 arms, and the trunk, Atman, the 25th. He adorns that trunk, the 25th, by this hymn. And then this day of the sacrifice consists of 25, and the stoma hymn of that day consists of 25 verses. It becomes the same through the same. Therefore, these two, the day and the hymn, are 25. These 25 verses, by repeating the first thrice and the last thrice, become 30 less 1. This is the Viraj verse consisting of 30 syllables, 2 small by 1. Into the small heart the vital spirits are placed. Into the small stomach food is placed. Therefore, this Viraj, small by 1, serves for the obtainment of those desires. He who knows this obtains those desires. The verses contained in the hymn Agnim Narodihidibi becomes the Brihati meter and the Viraj meter. They become the perfection which belongs to that day, the Mahavrata. Then they also become Anushtubh, for the offerings of Agnya, ghee, dwell in the Anushtubhs. Third Kanda. Some say, let him take a Gayatri hymn for the Prayuga. Verily, Gayatri is brightness and glory of countenance, and thus the sacrificer becomes bright and glorious. Others say, let him take a Ushni hymn for the Prayuga. Verily, the Ushni is life, and thus the sacrificer has a long life. Others say, let him take an Anushtubh hymn for the Prayuga. Verily, Anushtubh is valor, and it serves for obtaining valor. Others say, let him take a Brihati hymn for the Prayuga. Verily, Brihati is fortune, and thus the sacrificer becomes fortunate. Others say, let him take a Pankti hymn for the Prayuga. Verily, Pankti is food, and thus the sacrificer becomes rich in food. Others say, let him take a Tristubh hymn for the Prayuga. Verily, Tristubh is strength, and thus the sacrificer becomes strong. Others say, let him take a Gakati hymn for the Prayuga. Verily, cattle is Gakati-like, and thus the sacrificer becomes rich in cattle. But we say, let him take a Gayatri hymn only. Verily, Gayatri is Brahman, and that day the Mahavrata is for the attainment of Brahman. Thus he obtains Brahman by means of Brahman. And it must be a Gayatri hymn by Madhu Kandas. For Madhu Kandas is called Madhu Kandas because he wishes Kandati for honey, Madhu for the rshis. Now food verily is honey. All is honey. All desires are honey. And thus if he recites the hymn of Madhu Kandas, it serves for the attainment of all desires. He who knows this obtains all desires. This Gayatri Prayuga, according to the one-day Ekta ceremonial, is perfect in form. On that day, the Mahavrata, much is done now and then, which has to be hidden and has to be atoned for by recitation of hymns. Atonement, Santi, is rest, the one-day sacrifice. Therefore, at the end of the year, on the last day but one of the sacrifice, that lasts a whole year, the sacrificers rest on this atonement as their rest. He who knows this rests firm, and they also for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites this hymn. Fourth Kanda. Vayu ayahi darstame soma aram krita. Approach, O Vayu conspicuous, these somas have been made ready. Because the word ready occurs in these verses, therefore is this day of the sacrifice ready and auspicious for the sacrificer and for the gods. Yes, this day is ready and auspicious to him who knows this, or for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites. Indra Vayu ime suta ayatam upa nishkrutam. Indra and Vayu, these somas are prepared. Come hither towards what has been prepared. By nishkrita, prepared, he means what has been well prepared. Samaskrita. Indra and Vayu go to what has been prepared by him who knows this, or for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites. Mitram huve putadaksham diyam gritakim sadanta. I call Mitra of holy strength, he and Varuna. They fulfill the prayer accompanied with clarified butter. Verily, speech is the prayer accompanied with clarified butter. Speech is given to him who knows this, or for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites. Asvina yajvarir isha. O Ashvino, eat the sacrificial offerings. Verily, the sacrificial offerings are food, and this serves for the requirement of food. Aya yatam rudravartani. Come hither, ye Rudravartini. The Ashvino go to the sacrifice of him who knows this, or for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites. Indra yahi kitribano, Indra yahi diyeshita, Indra yahi tutujana. Come hither, Indra of bright splendor. Come hither, Indra, called by prayer. Come hither, Indra, quickly. Thus he recites, come hither, come hither. Indra comes to the sacrifice of him who knows this, or for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites. Omasas jarshani drito visve devasagata. Visve devas, protectors, supporters of men, come hither. Verily, the Visve devas come to the call of him who knows this, or for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites. Davamso dasuha sutham. Come, ye givers of the liberation of the giver. By dasuha he means dadusha, that is, to the liberation of everyone that gives. The gods fulfill his wish with whatever wish he recites this verse. The wish of him who knows this, or for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites. Pavakana Saraswati Yajnam Vastu Dihiya Vasu. May the holy Saraswati accept our sacrifice rich in prayer. Speech is meant by rich in prayer. Speech is given to him who knows this, or for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites. And when he says, may she accept our sacrifice, what he means is, may she carry off our sacrifice. If these verses are recited straight on, they are 21. Man also consists of 21. There are 10 fingers on his hands, 10 toes on his feet, and the trunk the 21st. He adorns that trunk the 21st by this hymn. By repeating the first and the last verses thrice, they become 25. The trunk is the 25th, and Prajapati is the 25th. There are 10 fingers on his hands, 10 toes on his feet, 2 legs, 2 arms, and the trunk the 25th. He adorns that trunk, the 25th, by this hymn. Now this day consists of 25, and the stoma hymn of that day consists of 25. it becomes the same through the same. Therefore, these two, the day and the hymn, are 25. 25. Second adhyaya. First Kanda. The two trikas. Atavaratam yatahotaye and idam vaso sutam mandha from the first pratipad and the second anukara of the Marut Vatiya hymn, both as belonging to the one-day ceremonial, are perfect in form. On that day, much is done now and then which has to be hidden and has to be atoned for. Atonement is rest, the one-day sacrifice. Therefore, at the end of the year, the sacrifices rest on this atonement as their rest. He who knows this rests firm, and they also for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites this hymn. In the second verse of the Pragatha, Indra Nediya ed idhi prasutira sachibir yeta ukthina, there occurs the word ukthina, reciters of hymns. Verily, this day the Mahavrata is an ukta hymn, and as endowed with an ukta, the form of this day is perfect. In the first verse of another Pragatha, the word vira, strong, occurs, and as endowed with the word vira, strong, the form of this day is perfect. In the second verse of another Pragatha, the word suviryam, strength, occurs, and as endowed with the word suvirya, strength, the form of this day is perfect. In the first verse of another Pragatha, the word ukthayam, to be hymned, occurs. Verily, this day is an ukta, and as endowed with an ukta, the form of this day is perfect. In the Daiva verse Agni Netha, the word Viritra, killer of Viritra, occurs. The killing of Viritra is a form character of Indra. This day the Mahavrata belongs to Indra, and this is the perfect form of that day. In the Dhaya verse, Tvam Soma Kratubi Sukartur Bhu, the word Vrisha, powerful, occurs. Powerful is a form character of Indra. This day belongs to Indra, and this is the perfect form of that day. In the Dhaya verse, Pinvanti Apa, the word Vajinam, endowed with food, occurs. Endowed with food is a form character of Indra. This day belongs to Indra, and this is the perfect form of that day. In the same verse, the word Stanayantam, thundering, occurs. Endowed with thundering is a form character of Indra. This day belongs to Indra, and this is the perfect form of that day. In the Prajatha, Prava Indraya Brihate, the word Brihat occurs. Verily, Brihat is Mahat, great, and as endowed with Mahat, great, the form of this day, Mahavrata, is perfect. In the Prajatha, Brihad Indraya Gayata, the word Brihat occurs. Verily, Brihat is Mahat, great, and as endowed with Mahat, the form of this day is perfect. In the Pragatha, Naki Sudaso Ratham Pari Asana Riramad, the words Paryasa, he moved around, and Na Riramad, he did not enjoy, occur. And as endowed with the words Paryasta and Ranti, the form of this day is perfect. He recites all these pragathas in order to obtain all the days of the sacrifice, all the uktas, all the parishtas, all the sastras, all the pragayugas, and all the savanas, libations. Second Kanda. He recites the hymn Asat Su Mi Garit Sabhi Vega, and in it the word Satyavritam, the destroyer of truth. Verily, that day is truth, and as endowed with the word Satya, truth, the form of this day is perfect. That hymn is composed by Vasukra. Verily, Vasukra is Brahman, and that day is Brahman. Thus he obtains Brahman by means of Brahman. Here they say, why then is that Marutvatya hymn completed by the hymn of Vasukra? Surely because no other rishi but Vasukra brought out a Marutvatya hymn, or divided it properly. Therefore, that Marutvatya hymn is completed by the hymn of Vasukra. That hymn, Asat Sumi, is not definitely addressed to any deity, and is therefore supposed to be addressed to Prajapati. Verily, Prajapati is infinite, and therefore the hymn serves to win Prajapati. Once in the hymn, he defines Indra, Indraya Sunvat. Therefore, it does not fall off from its form as connected with Indra. He recites that hymn, Piba Somam Abhiyam Ugra Tharda. In the verse, Urvam Gavyam Mahi Grinana Indra, the word Mahi, great, occurs. Endowed with the word Mahat, the form of this day is perfect. That hymn is composed by Bharadvaja, and Bharadvaja was he who knew most, who lived longest, and performed the greatest austerities among the rshis. And by this hymn he drove away evil. Therefore, if he recites the hymn of Bharadvaja, then, after having driven away evil, he becomes learned, long-lived, and full of austerities. He recites the hymn Kaya Subha Savayasa Sanila. In the verse Asasate Prati Harayanti Ukta, the word Ukta occurs. Verily, that day the Mahavrata is Ukta, hymn. Endowed with the word Ukta, the form of this day becomes perfect. That hymn is called Kaya Subhiya. Verily, that hymn, which is called Kaya Subhiya, is a mutual understanding, and it is lasting. By means of it, Indra, Agastya, and the Maruts came to a mutual understanding. Therefore, if he recites the Kaya Subhiya hymn, it serves for mutual understanding. The same hymn is also long life. Therefore, if the sacrificer is dear to the Hotri, let him recite the Kaya Subhiya hymn for him. He recites the hymn Marutvan Indra Varishabho Ranya. In it, the words Indra Varishabha, powerful, occur. Verily, powerful is a form of Indra. This day belongs to Indra, and this is the perfect form of that day. That hymn is composed by Viswamitra. Verily, Viswamitra was a friend, Mitra, of all Viswa. Everybody is the friend of him who knows this, and for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites this hymn. The next hymn, Janishta Ugra Sahase Turaya, forms the Nividhana, and according to the one-day Ekatha ceremonial is perfect in form. On that day, much is done now and then which has to be hidden, and has to be atoned for by recitation of hymns. Atonement is rest, the one-day sacrifice. Therefore, at the end of the year, on the last day but one of the sacrifice that lasts a whole year, the sacrificers rest on this atonement as their rest. He who knows this rests firm, and they also for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites this hymn. These he recited straight on, or 97 verses. The 90 or 3 viraj, each consisting of 30, and then the 7 verses which are over. Whatever is the praise of the 7 is the praise of 90 also. By repeating the first and last verses 3 times each, they become 101 verses. There are 5 fingers of 4 joints each, 2 pits in the elbow and the arm, the eye, the shoulder blade. This makes 25. The other 3 parts have likewise 25 each. That makes 100. On the trunk is the 101st. 100 is life, health, strength, brightness. The sacrificer as the 101st rests in life, health, strength, and brightness. These verses become Trishtub, for the noonday libation consists of Trishtub verses. Third Kanda. They say, what is the meaning of Prenka, swing? Verily, he is the swing who blows the wind. He indeed goes forward, pra plus inkate, in these worlds, and that is why the swing is called Prinka. Some say that there should be 1 plank, because the wind blows in one way, and it should be like the wind. That is not to be regarded. Some say there should be 3 planks, because there are these 3 threefold worlds, and it should be like them. That is not to be regarded. Let there be 2, for these 2 worlds, the earth and heaven, are seen as if most real, while the ether space between the 2 is the sky, Antariksha. Therefore, let there be 2 planks. Let them be made of Udumbra wood. Verily, the Udumbra tree is sap and eatable food, and thus it serves to obtain sap and eatable food. Let them be elevated in the middle, between the earth and the cross beam. Food, if placed in the middle, delights man, and thus he places the sacrificer in the middle of eatable food. There are 2 kinds of rope, twisted towards the right and twisted towards the left. The right rope serve for some animals, the left ropes for others. If there are both kinds of rope, they serve for the attainment of both kinds of cattle. Let them be made of dharba, kusa grass, for among plants dharma is free from evil. Therefore, they should be made of dharma grass. Fourth Kanda. Some say, let the swing be 1 ell, arantni, above the ground, for by that measure, verily, the Swarga worlds are measured. That is not to be regarded. Others say, let it be 1 span, pradesa, for by that measure, verily, the vital airs were measured. That is not to be regarded. Let it be 1 fist, mushti, for by that measure, verily, all eatable food is made, and by that measure, all eatable food is taken. Therefore, let it be 1 fist above the ground. They say, let him mount the swing from east to west, like he who shines, for the sun mounts these worlds from east to west. That is not to be regarded. Others say, let him mount the swing sideways, for people mount a horse sideways, thinking that thus they will obtain all desires. That is not to be regarded. They say, let him mount the swing from behind, for people mount a ship from behind, and this swing is a ship in which to go to heaven. Therefore, let him mount it from behind. Let him touch the swing with his chin. Kubuka. The parrot, Suka, thus mounts a tree, and he is of all birds the one who eats most food. Therefore, let him touch it with his chin. Let him mount the swing with his arms. The hawk sweeps thus on birds and on trees, and he is of all birds the strongest. Therefore, let him mount with his arms. Let him not withdraw 1 foot, the right or left, from the earth, for fear that he may lose his hold. The Hotri mounts the swing. The Udgatri, the seat made of Udumbra wood. The swing is masculine, the seat feminine, and they form a union. Thus he makes a union at the beginning of the Ukta in order to get offspring. He who knows this gets offspring and cattle. Next, the swing is food, the seat fortune. Thus he mounts and obtains food and fortune. The Hotrakas, the Prasistri, Brahmana, Kamsin, Potri, Neshtri, Agnidra, and Akavaka, together with the Brahman, sit down on cushions made of grass, reeds, leaves, etc. Plants and trees, after they have grown up, bear fruit. Thus, if the priests mount on that day altogether on their seats, they mount on solid and fluid as their proper food. Therefore, this serves for the attainment of solid as proper food. Some say, let him descend after saying Vasat. That is not to be regarded. For verily that respect is not shown which is shown to one who does not see it. Others say, let him descend after he has taken the food in his hand. That is not to be regarded. For verily that respect is not shown which is shown to one after he has approached quite close. Let him descend after he has seen the food. For verily that is real respect which is shown to one when he sees it. Only after having actually seen the food that is brought to the sacrifice, let him descend from the swing. Let him descend turning towards the east, for in the east the seed of the gods springs up. Therefore, let him rise turning towards the east, turning towards the east. Third Adhyaya. First Kanda. Let him begin this day with singing hymn. Thus they say, verily the sound hymn is Brahman. That day also is Brahman. He who knows this obtains Brahman even by Brahman. As he begins with the sound hymn, surely that masculine sound of hymn and the feminine rik verse make a couple. Thus he makes a couple at the beginning of the hymn in order to get offspring. He who knows this gets cattle and offspring. Or, as he begins with the sound hymn, surely like a wooden spade, so the sound hymn serves to dig up Brahman, the sap of the Veda. And as a man wishes to dig up any, even the hardest soil, with a spade, thus he digs up Brahman. He who knows this digs up, by means of the sound hymn, everything he may desire. If he begins with the sound hymn, that sound is the holding apart of divine and human speech. Therefore, he who begins after having uttered the sound hymn holds apart divine and human speech. Second Kanda. And here they ask, what is the beginning of this day? Let him say, mind and speech. All desires dwell in the one mind, the other yields all desires. All desires dwell in the mind, for with the mind he conceives all desires. All desires come to him who knows this. Speech yields all desires, for with speech he declares all his desires. Speech yields all desires to him who knows this. Here they say, let him not begin this day with a rik, a yajus, or a saman verse, divine speech, for it is said, he should not start with a rik, a ajus, or a saman. Therefore, let him say these vayagritis, sacred interjections, first. These interjections, bus, bhuvas, sava, or the three Vedas. Bus, the Rigveda; bhuvas, the Yajur Veda; sava, the Sama Veda. Therefore, by intercalating these, he does not begin simply with a rik, yajus, or saman verse. He does not start with a rik, yajus, or saman verse. Third Kanda. He begins with third. This, the first word of the first hymn, third id asa. Verily, this is food, and thus he obtains food. Prajapati indeed uttered this as the first word, consisting of one or two syllables, namely tata and tata, or tat. And thus does a child, as soon as he begins to speak, utter the word consisting of one or two syllables, namely tata and tata, or tat. With this very word consisting of tat or tata, he begins. This has been said by a rishi. O Brihaspati, the first point of speech, for this is the first and highest point of speech, that which you have uttered, making it a name, for names are made by speech. That name which was the best and without a flaw, for this is the best and without a flaw. That which was hidden by their love is made manifest, for this was hidden in the body, namely those deities which enter the body, Agni as voice entering the mouth, etc., and that was manifest among the gods in heaven. This is what was intended by the verse. Fourth Kanda. He begins with, that indeed was the oldest in the worlds, for that the Brahman is verily the oldest in the worlds. Whence was born the force one, endowed with brilliant force? For from it was born the fierce one, who is endowed with brilliant force. When born, he at once destroys the enemies, for he at once, when born, struck down the evil one. He after whom all friends rejoice, verily, all friends are the creatures, and they rejoice after him, saying, He has risen, He has risen. Growing by strength, the Almighty, for He, the Son, does grow by strength, the Almighty. He as enemy causes fear to the slave, for everything is afraid of him. Taking the breathing and the not breathing, this means living and the lifeless. Whatever has been offered at feasts came to thee. This means everything is in thy power. All turn their thoughts also on thee. This means all these things, all minds, all thoughts also turn to thee. When these two become three protectors, that is, when these two united beget offspring, he who knows this gets offspring and cattle. Join what is sweeter than sweet, offspring, with the sweet, the parents. For the couple, father and mother, is sweet, the offspring is sweet, and he thus joins the offspring with the couple. And this, the son when married, being very sweet, conquered through the sweet. That is, the couple is sweet, the offspring is sweet, and thus, through the couple, he conquers offspring. This is declared by a rishi. Because he, Prajapati, raised his body, the hymn Tad id asa, or the Veda in general, in the body of the sacrificer. Therefore, that Nishkavelya hymn is praised. That is, this body consisting of the Veda in that corporal form of the sacrificer. Then let this body indeed be the medicine of that body. That is, this body consisting of the Veda of that corporal form of the sacrificer. Of this, the 8 syllables are Gayatri, the 11 syllables are Trishtubh, and 12 syllables are Gagati. The 10 syllables are Viraj. The Viraj, consisting of 10 syllables, rests in these 3 meters. The word Purusha, consisting of 3 syllables, that indeed goes into the Viraj. Verily, these are all meters, these Gayatri, Trishtubh, Gagati, having the Viraj as the 4th. In this manner, this day is complete in all meters to him who knows this. Fifth Kanda. He extends these verses by interpolating the sound. Verily, the sound is Purusha, man, Therefore every man, when he speaks, sounds loud, as it were. At the end of each foot of the first verse of the hymn, Tad Id Asa, he inserts 1 foot of the second verse of hymn, Nadam va odadinam, etc. Thus, the verse is to be recited as follows: Tad id asa bhuvaneshu jayeshtham punadam va odadinam yado jajna ugras tveshanirimno runadam yoyuvadinam sadhyo jajano Nirinati Satrun Patim Vo Agneyanam Anuyam Visve Madani Umah Sho Dedi Yunam Ishudiyasi. In Nadam Va Odadinam, Odathi are the waters in heaven, for they water all this, and they are the waters in the mouth, for they water all good food. In Nadam Yoyovadinam, Yoyuvadi are the waters in the sky, for they seem to inundate, and they are the waters of perspiration, for they seem to run continually. In Patim Vo Agniyanam, Agnaya are the waters which spring from the smoke of fire, and they are the waters which spring from the organ. In Denunam Ishduyasi, the Denu cows are the waters, for they delight all this. The Ishduyasi means thou art food. He extends the Tristub and an Anustub. Tristub is the man, Anustub his wife, and they make a couple. Therefore does a man, after having found a wife, consider himself a more perfect man. These verses, by repeating the first 3 times, become 25. The trunk is the 25th, and Prajapati is the 25th. There are 10 fingers on his hands, 10 toes on his feet, 2 legs, 2 arms, and the trunk the 25th. He adorns that trunk as the 25th. Now this day consists of 25, and the stoma hymn of that day consists of 25. It becomes the same through the same. Therefore the 2, the day and the hymn, are 25. 6th Kanda. This is an exact repetition of the 3rd Kanda. According to the commentator, the 3rd Kanda was intended for the glory of the first word Thad, while the 6th is intended for the glory of the whole hymn. 7th Kanda. He begins with the hymn Tad id asa bhuvaneshu jayeshtham. Verily, Jayeshtha, the oldest, is Mahat, great. Endowed with Mahat, the form of this day is perfect. Then follows the hymn Tam Suthe Kritam Maghavan Mahitva, with the auspicious word Mahitva. Then follows the hymn Bhuya id Vavaridhe Viryaya, with the auspicious word Virya. Then follows the hymn Nirnam Utva Nirithamam Gobhir Ukthaya, with the auspicious word Uktha. He extends the first 2 padas, which are too small, by 1 syllable. Into the small heart the vital spirits are placed, into the small stomach food is placed. It serves for the attainment of these desires. He who knows this obtains these desires. The 2 feet, each consisting of 10 syllables, serve for the gaining of both kinds of food of what has feet, animal food, and what has no feet, vegetable food. They come to the 18 syllables each. Of those which are 10, 9 are the pranas, openings of the body. The 10th is the vital self. This is the perfection of the vital self. 8 syllables remain in each. He who knows them obtains whatever he desires. 8th Kanda. He extends these verses by interpolating the sound. Verily, breath prana is sound. Therefore, every breath, when it sounds loud as it were. The verse nadam va oditnam, etc., is by its syllables an ushni, by its feet an anustub. Ushni is life, anustub speech. He thus places life and speech in him, the sacrificer. By repeating the first verse 3 times, they become 25. The trunk is the 25th, and Prajapati is the 25th. There are 10 fingers on his hands, 10 toes on his feet, 2 legs, 2 arms, and the trunk the 25th. He adorns that trunk as the 25th. Now this day consists of 25, and the stoma hymn of that day consists of 25. It becomes the same through the same. Therefore the two, the day and the hymn, are 25. This is the 25th with regard to the body. Next, with regard to the deities, the eye, the ear, the mind, speech and breath. These 5 deities' powers have entered into that person, Purusha, and that person entered into the 5 deities. He is wholly pervaded there, with his limbs to the very hairs and nails. Therefore all beings, to the very insects, are born as pervaded by the deities or senses. This has been declared by a rishi. 1,000-fold are these 15 hymns, for 5 arise from 10. As large as heaven and earth, so large is it. Verily, the self, Jivatman, is as large as heaven and earth. 1,000-fold are the 1,000 powers. By saying this, the poet pleases the hymns, the senses, and magnifies them. As far as Brahman reaches, so far reaches speech. Wherever there is Brahman, there is a word, and wherever there is a word, there is Brahman. This was intended. The first of the hymns among all those hymns has 9 verses. Verily, there are 9 pranas openings, and it serves for their benefit. Then follows a hymn of 6 verses. Verily, the seasons are 6, and it serves to obtain them. Then follows a hymn of 5 verses. Verily, the pankti consists of 5 feet. Verily, pankti is food, and it serves for the gaining of proper food. Then follows a trisht. There are these 3-fold words, and it serves to conquer them. These verses become brihatis, that meter being immortal, leading to the world of the devas. That body of verses is the trunk of the bird represented by the whole Shastra, and thus it is. He who knows this comes by this way, by making the verses the trunk of the bird, near to the immortal self. Yeah, to the immortal self. 4th Adhyaya. 1st Kanda. Next comes the Sudadohas verse. Sudadohas is breath, and thereby he joins all joints with breath. Next follow the neck verses. They recite them as Ushni, according to their meter. Next comes again the Sudadohas verse. Sudadohas is breath, and thereby he joins all joints with breath. Next follows the head, that is in Gayatri verses. The Gayatri is the beginning of all meters, the head the first of all members. It is in Arkavat verses. Arka is Agni. They are 9 verses. The head consists of 9 pieces. He recites the 10th verse, and that is the skin and the hairs on the head. It serves for reciting 1 verse more than the 9 verses contained in the stoma. These form the Trivritti stoma and the Gayatri meter, and whatever there exists, all this is produced after the production of the stoma and this meter. Therefore, the recitation of these head hymns serves for production. He who knows this gets offspring and cattle. Next comes the Sudadohas verse. Verily, the Sudadohas is breath, and thereby he joins all joints with breath. Next follow the vertebrae of the bird. These verses are Viraj, shining. Therefore man says to man, Thou shinest above us, or to a stiff and proud man, Thou carriest thy neck stiff. Or because the vertebrae of the neck run close together, they are taken to be the best food, for Viraj is food, and food is strength. Next comes the Sudadohas verse. Sudadohas is breath, and thereby he joins all joints with breath. Second Kanda. Next follows the right wing. It is this world, the earth, it is this Agni, it is speech, it is Ratantara, it is Vashistha, it is 100. These are the 6 powers of the right wing. The Sampatha hymn serves indeed for obtaining desires and for firmness. The Panki verse serves for proper food. Next comes the Sudadohas verse. Sudadohas is breath, thereby he joins all joints with breath. Next follows the left wing. It is that world, heaven, it is that sun, it is mind, it is the Brahat, it is Bharadvaja, it is 100. These are the 6 powers of the left wing. The Sampatha hymn serves indeed for obtaining desires and for firmness. The Panki verse serves for proper food. These two, the right and the left wings, are deficient and excessive. The Brihat, the left wing, is man. The Ratantara, the right wing, is woman. The excess belongs to the man, the deficiency to the woman. Therefore, they are deficient and excessive. Now the left wing of a bird is verily by 1 feather better. Therefore, the left wing is larger by 1 verse. Next comes the Sudadohas verse. Sudadohas is breath, and thereby he joins all joints with breath. Next follows the tail. They are 21 Divipada verses, for there are 21 backward feathers in a bird. Then the Ekavimsa is the supporter of all stomas, and the tail the support of all birds. He recites a 22nd verse. This is made the form of 2 supports. Therefore all birds support themselves on their tail, and having supported themselves on their tail, they fly up, for the tail is a support. He, the bird, and the hymn is supported by 2 decades, which are viraj. The man, the sacrificer, is supported by the 2 divipadas, the 21st and 22nd. That which forms the bird serves for the attainment of all desires. That which forms the man serves for his happiness, glory, proper food, and honor. Next comes a Sudodoha's verse, then Adhyaya, then a Sudodoha's verse. The Sudodohas is a man, the Daya a woman. Therefore, he recites the Dhyaya as embraced on both sides by the Sudodohas. Therefore does the seed of both, when it is effused, obtain oneness, and this with regard to the woman only. Hence birth takes place in and from the woman. Therefore he recites that Dhyaya in that place. Third Kanda. He recites the 80 Trishtish of Gayatris. Verily, the 80 Gayatri Trishtish are this world, earth. Whatever there is in this world of glory, greatness, wives, food, and honor, may I obtain it. May I win it. May it be mine. Next comes the Sudodoha's verse. Sudodoha's verily is breath. He joins this world with breath. He recites the 80 Trishtish of Brihatis. Verily, the 80 Brihati Trishtish are the world of the sky. Whatever there is in the world of the sky, of glory, greatness, wives, food, and honor, may I obtain it. May I win it. May it be mine. Next comes the Sudadoha's verse. Sudadoha's verily is breath. He joins the world of the sky with breath. He recites the 80 Trishtish of Ushni. Verily, the 80 Ushni Trishtish are that world, the heaven. Whatever there is in that world of glory, greatness, wives, food, and honor, also the divine being of the Devas, Brahman, may I obtain it. May I win it. May it be mine. Next comes the Sudadoha's verse. Sudadoha's verily is the breath. He joins that world with breath. Yeah, with breath. Fifth Adhyaya, First Kanda. He recites the Vasa hymn, wishing may everything be in my power. Its verses are 21. For 21 are the parts, the lungs, spleen, etc. in the belly. Then the Ekavimsa is verily the support of all stomas, and the belly the support of all food. They consist of different meters. Verily, the intestines are confused, some small, some large. He recites them with the pranava according to the meter and according to rule. Verily, the intestines are according to rule, as it were, some shorter, some longer. Next comes the Sudadoha's verse. Sudadoha's verily is breath. He joins the joints with breath. After having recited that verse 12 times, he leaves it off there. These pranas are verily 12-fold, 7 in the head, 2 on the breast, 3 below. In these 12 places the pranas are contained. There they are perfect. Therefore he leaves it off there. The hymn Indragni Yuvam Suna forms the 2 thighs of the bird, belonging to Indra and Agni, the 2 supporters with broad bones. These verses consist of 6 feet, so that they may stand firm. Man stands firm on 2 feet, animals on 4. He thus places man, the sacrificer, standing on 2 feet among 4-footed cattle. The second verse has 7 feet, and he makes it into a Gayatri and Anustub. Gayatri is Brahman, Anustub is speech, and he thus puts together speech with Brahman. He recites a Tristub at the end. Tristub is strength, and thus does he come round animals by strength. Therefore, animals come near where there is strength of command, etc. They come to be roused and to rise up. They obey the commands of a strong shepherd. Second Kanda. When he recites the Nishkevalya hymn addressed to Indra, Pravo Mahe, he inserts a nivid between the 4th and 5th verses. Thus he clearly places strength in himself, in the Shastra, in the bird, in himself. They are Tristubs and Gagatis. There they say, why does he insert a nivid among mixed Tristubs and Gagatis? But surely 1 meter would never support the nivid of this day, nor fill it. Therefore he inserts the nivid among mixed Tristubs and Gagatis. Let him know that this day has 3 nivids. The Vasa hymn is the nivid. The Valakilyas are a nivid, and the nivid itself is a nivid. Thus let him know that day as having 3 nivids. Then follow the hymns of Vane Nava and Yogata Iva. In the 4th verse of the former hymn occurs the words Anne Samsaya Yad Asan Manisha, and they serve for the winning of proper food. Then comes an insertion. As many Tristub and Gagati verses taken from the 10 mandalas and addressed to Indra, as they insert between the 2 above-mentioned hymns, after changing them into Brihatis, so many years do they live beyond the usual age of 100 years. By this insertion, age is obtained. After that, he recites the Saganiya hymn, wishing that cattle may always come to his offspring. Then he recites the Tarksha hymn. Tarksha is verily welfare, and the hymn leads to welfare. Thus, by reciting the hymn, he fares well. Then he recites the Ekapada, Indro Visvam Virajati, wishing, may I be everything at once, and may I thus finish the whole work of meters. In reciting the hymn, Indram Visva Abhivridhan, he intertwines the first 7 verses by intertwining their feet. There are 7 pranas openings in the head, and thus he places 7 pranas in the head. The 8th verse, half verse, he does not intertwine. The 8th is speech, and he thinks, may my speech never be intertwined with the other pranas. Speech, therefore, though dwelling in the same abode as the other pranas, is not intertwined with them. He recites the Viraj verses. Verily, Viraj verses are food, and they thus serve for the gaining of food. He ends with a hymn of Vasishta, wishing, may I be Vasishta. But let him end with the 5th verse, Isha Stomo Maha Ugraya Vahe, which, possessing the word Mahat, is auspicious. In the 2nd foot of the 5th verse, the word Dri occurs, Verily, Dhu, the place where the horse is fastened to the car, is the end of the car. This day also is the end of the sacrifice, which lasts a whole year. Thus, the verse is fit for the day. In the third foot, Arka is auspicious. The last foot is, make our glory high as heaven over heaven. Thus, wherever Brahmanic speech is uttered, there his glory will be, when he who knows this finishes with that verse. Therefore, let a man who knows this finish the Nishkevalya with that verse. Third Kanda. Tat Savitur Virinimahe and Adya no Deva Savitar are the beginning, Pratipad, and the next step, Anukkara, of the Visva Deva hymn, taken from the Ekaha ceremonial and therefore proper. On that day, much is done now and then which is to be hidden and has to be atoned for. Atonement is rest, the one-day sacrifice. Therefore, at the end of the year, the sacrificers rest on this atonement as their rest. He who knows this rests firm, and they also for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites this hymn. Then follows the hymn addressed to Savitri. Tad devasya savitur varyam mahat. Verily, mahat, great, in this foot is the end. This day too is the end. Thus the verse is fit for the day. The hymn Katara Purva Katara Parayo, addressed to Daiva Prithvi, is one in which many verses have the same ending. Verily, this day also the Mahavrata is one in which many recite the same reward. Thus it is fit for the day. The hymn Anasavo Gato Anubashur Ukthaya is addressed to the Ribhus. In the first verse, the word Tri, Kakra, occurs, and Trivat is verily the end. This day also is the end of the sacrifice. Thus the verse is fit for the day. The hymn Asya Vamasya Palitasya Hothu, addressed to the Visvadevas, is multiform. This day also is multiform. Thus the verse is fit for the day. He recites the end of it, beginning with Gaurir Mimaya. The hymn Ano Badra Kartavoyantu Vishvatha, addressed to the Vishvadevas, forms the Nividhana taken from the Ekatha ceremonial and therefore proper. On that day, much is done now and then which has to be hidden and has to be atoned for. Atonement is rest, the one-day sacrifice. Therefore, at the end of the year, the sacrificers rest on this atonement as their rest. He who knows this rests firm, and they also for whom a Hotri priest who knows this recites this hymn. The hymn Vishvanarayana Dishanam Rita Vridhe forms the beginning of the Agni Maruta. Dishana thought is verily the end. This day also is the end. Thus it is fit for the day. The hymn Paragyavo Maruto Bragadrishtaya, addressed to the Maruts, is one in which many verses have the same ending. Verily, this day also is one in which many receive the same reward. Thus it is fit for the day. He recites the verse Gata Vedase Sunavama Somam, addressed to Gata Vedas, before the next following hymn. That verse addressed to Gatha Vedas is verily welfare and leads to welfare. Thus, by reciting it, he fares well. The hymn Imam Stomam Arhate Gatha Vedase, addressed to the Gatha Vedas, is one in which many verses have the same ending. Verily, this day also, the Mahavrata is one in which many receive the same reward. Thus it is fit for the day. Yeah, it is fit for the day. Second Aranyaka. First Adhyaya. First Kanda.
With the second Aranyaka, the Upanishad begins. It comprises the second and third Aranyakas and may be said to consist of 3 divisions or 3 Upanishads. Their general title is Bhavraka Upanishad, sometimes Aitareya Upanishad, while the Upanishad generally known as Aitareya Upanishad comprises the 4th, 5th, and 6th adhyayas only of the second Aranyaka. The character of the 3 component portions of the Upanishad can best be described in Sankara's own words. Aranyaka 3rd, 1, 1st, Introduction, page 306. There are 3 classes of men who want to acquire knowledge. The highest consists of those who have turned away from the world, whose minds are fixed on one subject and collected, and who yearn to be free at once. For these, a knowledge of Brahman is intended as taught in the Aitareya-Āraṇyaka, 2nd, 4-6. The middle class are those who wish to become free gradually by attaining to the world of Hiranyagarbha. For them, the knowledge and worship of prana, breath and life, is intended, as explained in the Aitareya-Āraṇyaka 2nd, 1-3. The lowest class consists of those who do not care either for immediate or gradual freedom, but who desire nothing but offspring, cattle, etc. For these, the meditative worship of the Samhita is intended, as explained in the 3rd Aranyaka. They cling too strongly to the letter of the sacred text to be able to surrender it for a knowledge either of prana, life, or of Brahman. The connection between the Upanishad, or rather the 3 Upanishads, and the first Aranyaka seems at first sight very slight. Still, we soon perceive that it would be impossible to understand the first Upanishad without a previous knowledge of the Mahavrata ceremony as described in the first Aranyaka. On this point, too, there are some pertinent remarks in Sankara's commentary on the Aranyaka 2nd, 1-2. Our first duty, he says, consists in performing sacrifices, such as are described in the first portion of the Veda, the Samhitas, Brahmanas, and, to a certain extent, in the Aranyakas also. Afterwards arises a desire for knowledge, which cannot be satisfied except a man has first attained complete concentration of thought, ekagrata. In order to acquire that concentration, the performance of certain upasanas or meditations is enjoined, such as we find described in our Upanishad, namely in Aranyaka 2nd, 1-5. This meditation, or as it is sometimes translated, worship is of 2 kinds, either Brahmopasana or Pratikopasana. Brahmopasana or meditation on Brahman consists in thinking of him as distinguished by certain qualities. Pratikopasana or meditation on symbols consists in looking upon certain worldly objects as if they were Brahman, in order thus to withdraw the mind from the too powerful influence of external objects. These objects, thus lifted up into symbols of Brahman, are of 2 kinds, either connected with sacrifice or not. In our Upanishad, we have to deal with the former class only, viz. With certain portions of the Mahavrata, as described in the first Aranyaka. In order that the mind may not be entirely absorbed by the sacrifice, it is lifted up during the performance from the consideration of these sacrificial objects to a meditation on higher objects, leading up at last to Brahman as prana, or life. This meditation is to be performed by the priests, and while they meditate, they may meditate on a hymn or on a single word of it as meaning something else, such as the sun, the earth, or the sky, but not vice versa. And if in one shaka, as in that of the Aitareyans, for instance, a certain hymn has been symbolically explained, the same explanation may be adopted by another shaka also, such as that of the Kaushitakans. It is not necessary, however, that every part of the sacrifice should be accompanied by meditation, but it is left optional to the priest in what particular meditation he wishes to engage, nor is even the time of the sacrifice the only right time for him to engage in these meditations.
This is the path, this sacrifice, and this Brahman, this is the true. Let no man swerve from it, let no man transgress it. For the old sages did not transgress it, and those who did transgress became lost. This has been declared by a rishi. 3 classes of people transgressed. Others settled down round about the venerable Agni, fire. The great sun stood in the midst of the worlds. The blowing Vayu air entered the Harats, the dawns or the ends of the earth. When he says 3 classes of people transgressed, the 3 classes of people who transgressed are what we see here on earth, born again, as birds, trees, herbs, and serpents. When he says, others settle down round about the venerable, he means those who now sit down to worship Agni, fire. When he says, the great stood in the midst of the worlds, the great one in the midst of the world is meant for this Aditya, the sun. When he says, the blowing entered the Harits, he means that Vayu, the air, the purifier, entered all the corners of the earth. Second Kanda. People say, Ukta, Ukta, hymns, hymns, without knowing what Ukta, hymn, means. The hymn is truly to be considered as the earth, for from it all whatsoever exists arises. The object of its praise is Agni, and the 80 verses of the hymn are food, for by means of food one obtains everything. The hymn is truly the sky, for the birds fly along the sky and men drive following the sky. The object of its praise is Vayu, air, and the 80 verses of the hymn are food, for by means of food one obtains everything. The hymn is truly the heaven, for from its gift rain all whatsoever exists arises. The object of its praise is Aditya, the sun, and the 80 verses are food, for by means of food one obtains everything. So much with reference to the gods, mythological. Now with reference to man, physiological. The hymn is truly man. He is great. He is Prajapati. Let him think, I am the hymn. The hymn is his mouth, as before in the case of the earth. The object of its praise is speech, and the 80 verses of the hymn are food, for by means of food he obtains everything. The hymn is the nostrils, as before in the case of the sky. The object of its praise is breath, and the 80 verses of the hymn are food, for by means of food he obtains everything. The slight bend at the root of the nose is, as it were, the place of the brilliant Aditya. The hymn is the forehead, as before in the case of heaven. The object of its praise is the eye, and the 80 verses of the hymn are food, for by means of food he obtains everything. The 80 verses of the hymn are alike food with reference to the gods as well as with reference to man, for all these beings breathe and live by means of food indeed. By food given in alms, etc., he conquers this world. By food given in sacrifice, he conquers the other. Therefore, the 80 verses of the hymn are alike food with reference to the gods as well as with reference to man. All this that is food, and all this that consumes food, is only the earth. For from the earth arises all whatever there is, and all that goes hence dies on earth. Heaven consumes it all, and all that goes thence returns from heaven to a new life. The earth consumes it all. That earth is thus both food and consumer. He also, the true worshipper, who meditates on himself as being the Ukta, is both consumer and consumed, subject and object. No one possesses that which he does not eat, or the things which do not eat him. Third Kanda. Next follows the origin of seed. The seed of Prajapati are the Devas, gods. The seed of the Devas is rain. The seed of rain are herbs. The seed of herbs is food. The seed of food is seed. The seed of seed are creatures. The seed of creatures is the heart. The seed of the heart is the mind. The seed of the mind is speech, Veda. The seed of speech is action, sacrifice. The action done in a former state is this man, the abode of Brahman. He, man, consists of food, Ira, and because he consists of food, Iramaya, he consists of gold, Hiranmaya. He who knows this becomes golden in the other world, and is seen as golden as the sun for the benefit of all beings. Fourth Kanda. Brahman in the shape of prana, breath, entered into that man by the tips of his feet, and because Brahman entered prapadyata into that man by the tips of his feet, therefore people call them the tips of the feet, prapada, but hooves and claws in other animals. Then Brahman crept up higher, and therefore they were called the thighs, Uru. Then he said, grasp wide, and that was called the belly, Udara. Then he said, make room for me, and that was called the chest, Uras. The Sarkarakshas meditate on the belly as Brahman, the Arunis on the heart. Both these places are Brahman indeed. But Brahman crept upwards and came to the head. And because he came to the head, therefore the head is called head. Then these delights are lighted in the head: sight, hearing, mind, speech, breath. Delights alight on him who thus knows why the head is called head. These 5 delights or senses, strove together, saying, I am the Ukta, him, I am the Ukta. Well, they said, let us all go out from this body. Then on whose departure this body shall fall, he shall be the Ukta among us. Speech went out, yet the body without speaking remained, eating and drinking. Sight went out, yet the body without seeing remained, eating and drinking. Hearing went out, yet the body without hearing remained, eating and drinking. Mind went out, yet the body, as if blinking, remained, eating and drinking. Breath went out. Then, when breath was gone out, the body fell. It was decayed, and because people said it decayed, therefore it was called body, sarira. That is the reason of its name. If a man knows this, then the evil enemy who hates him decays, or the evil enemy who hates him is defeated. They strove again, saying, I am the Ukta, I am the Ukta. Well, they said, let us enter that body again. Then on whose entrance this body shall rise again, he shall be the Ukta among us. Speech entered, but the body lay still. Sight entered, but the body lay still. Hearing entered, but the body lay still. Mind entered, but the body lay still. Breath entered, and when breath had entered, the body rose, and it became the Ukta. Therefore, breath alone is the Ukta. Let people know that breath is the Ukta indeed. The Devas, the other senses, said to breath, Thou art the Ukta. Thou art all this. We are thine. Thou art ours. This has also been said by a rishi. Thou art ours. We are thine. Fifth Kanda. Then the Devas carried him, the breath, forth. And being carried forth, he was stretched out. And when people said, he was stretched out, then it was in the morning. When they said, he is gone to rest, then it was in the evening. Day, therefore, is the breathing up, night the breathing down. Speech is Agni, sight that Aditya, sun, mind the moon, hearing the dis, quarters. This is the Prahitam Sam Yoga, the union of the deities as sent forth. These deities, Agni, etc., are thus in the body, but their phenomenal appearance yonder is among the deities. This was intended. And Hiranyadat Vaidya also, who knew this, and who by his knowledge had become Hiranyagarbha, or the universal spirit, said, Whatever they do not give to me, they do not possess themselves. I know the Prahitam Sam Yoga, the union of the deities as entered into the body. This is it. To him who knows this, all creatures, without being constrained, offer gifts. That breath is to be called Satya, the true, for Sat is breath, Thi is food, Yam is the sun. This is threefold, and threefold the eye also may be called, it being white, dark, and the pupil. He who knows why true is true, why Satya is Satya, even if he should speak falsely, yet what he says is true. Sixth Kanda. Speech is his, the breath's rope, the names, the knots. Thus by his speech as by a rope, and by his names as by knots, all this is bound. For all this are names indeed, and with speech he calls everything. People carry him who knows this as if they were bound by a rope. Of the body of the breath thus meditated on, the Ushni verse forms the hairs, the Gayatri the skin, the Tristubh the flesh, the Anushtubh the muscles, the Gagati the bone, the Panki the marrow, the Brihati the breath prana. He is covered with the verses, Kandas, meters, because he is thus covered with verses. Therefore, they call him Kandas, coverings, meters. If a man knows the reason why Kandas are called Kandas, the verses cover him in whatever place he likes against any evil deed. This is said by a rishi. I saw the breath as a guardian, never tiring, coming and going on his ways, the arteries. That breath in the body, being identified with the sun among the devas, illuminating the principal and intermediate quarters of the sky, is returning constantly in the midst of the worlds. He says, I saw a guardian because he, the breath, is a guardian, for he guards everything. He says, never tiring because the breath never rests. He says, coming and going on his ways because the breath comes and goes on his ways. He says, illuminating the principal and intermediate, because he illuminates these only, the principal and intermediate quarters of the sky. He says, he is returning constantly in the midst of the worlds, because he returns indeed constantly in the midst of the worlds. And then there is another verse. They are covered like caves by those who make them. For all this is covered indeed by breath. This ether is supported by breath as Brihati, and as this ether is supported by breath as Brihati, so one should know that all things, not excepting ants, are supported by breath as Brihati. Seventh Kanda. Next follow the powers of that person. By his speech, earth and fire were created. Herbs are produced on the earth, and Agni, fire, makes them ripe and sweet. Take this, thus saying, do earth and fire serve their parent, speech. As far as the earth reaches, as far as fire reaches, so far does his world extend, and as long as the world of the earth and fire does not decay, so long does his world not decay, who thus knows this power of speech. By breath in the nose, the sky and the air were created. People follow the sky, and hear along the sky, while the air carries along pure scent. Thus do sky and air serve their parent, the breath. As far as the sky reaches, as far as the air reaches, so far does his world extend. And as long as the world of the sky and the air does not decay, so long does his world not decay, who thus knows this power of breath. By his eye heaven and the sun were created. Heaven gives him rain and food, while the sun causes his light to shine. Thus do the heaven and the sun serve their parent, the eye. As far as heaven reaches, and as far as the sun reaches, so far does his world extend, and as long as the world of heaven and the sun does not decay, so long does his world not decay, who thus knows the power of the eye. By his ear the quarters and the moon were created. From all the quarters they come to him, and from all the quarters he hears, while the moon produces for him the bright and the dark halves for the sake of sacrificial work. Thus do the quarters and the moon serve their parent, the ear. As far as the quarters reach, and as far as the moon reaches, so far does his world extend, and as long as the world of the quarters and the moon does not decay, so long does his world not decay, who thus knows the power of the ear. By his mind and water the Varuna were created. Water yields to him faith, being used for sacred acts. Varuna keeps his offspring within the law. Thus do water and Varuna serve their parent, the mind. As far as water reaches, and as far as Varuna reaches, so far does his world extend, and as long as the world of water and Varuna does not decay, so long does his world not decay, who thus knows the power of the mind. 8th Kanda. Was it water, really? Was it water? Yes, all this was water indeed. This water was the root cause, that the world was the shoot effect. He, the person, is the father, they, earth, fire, etc., or the sons. Whatever there is belonging to the son belongs to the father. Whatever there is belonging to the father belongs to the son. This was intended. Mahidasa Aitareya, who knew this, said, I know myself reaching as far as the gods, and I know the gods reaching as far as me. For these gods receive their gifts from hence, and are supported from hence. This is the mountain, namely, eye, ear, mind, speech, and breath. They call it the mountain of Brahman. He who knows this throws down the evil enemy who hates him. The evil enemy who hates him is defeated. He, the prana identified with Brahman, is the life, the breath. He is being while the Jivatman remains, and not being when the Jivatman departs. The Devas, speech, etc., worshipped him, prana, as buddhi or being, and thus they became great beings. And therefore, even now, a man who sleeps breathes like Burubho. The Asuras worshipped him as Abhuti, or not being, and thus they were defeated. He who knows this becomes great by himself, while the evil enemy who hates him is defeated. He, the breath, is death when he departs, and immortality while he abides. And this has been said by a rishi, downwards and upwards he, the wind of the breath, goes, held by food. For this up-breathing, being held back by the down-breathing, does not move forward and leave the body altogether. The immortal dwells in the mortal, for through him, the breath, all this dwells together, the bodies being clearly mortal, but this being, the breath, being immortal. These two, body and breath, go forever in different directions, the breath moving the senses of the body supporting the senses of the breath, the former going upwards to another world, the body dying and remaining on earth. They increase the one, the body, but they do not increase the other. That is, they increase these bodies by food, but this being, breath, is immortal. He who knows this becomes immortal in that world, having become united with Hiranyagarbha, and is seen as immortal in the sun by all beings. By all beings. Second Adhyaya. First Kanda. He, the sun who shines, honored this world, the body of the worshipper, by entering into it, in the form of a man, the worshipper who meditates on breath. For he who shines, the sun, is the same as the breath. He honored this body of the worshipper during 100 years. Therefore, there are 100 years in the life of a man. Because he honored him during 100 years, therefore, there are the poets of the first mandala of the Rigveda, called the Satarkin, having honor for 100 years. Therefore, people call him who is really prana breath, the Satarkin poets. He, breath, placed himself in the midst of all whatsoever exists. Because he placed himself in the midst of all whatsoever exists, therefore there are the poets of the second to the 9th mandala of the Rigveda, called the Madhyamas. Therefore people call him who is really prana breath, the Madhyama poets. He as up-breathing is the swallower, Gritsa, as down-breathing he is delight, Mada, because as up-breathing is swallower, Gritsa, and as down-breathing, delight, Mada. Therefore there is the poet of the second mandala of the Rigveda, called Gritsamada. Therefore people call him who is really prana breath, Gritsamada. Of him, breath, all this whatsoever was a friend. Because of him all Viswam, this whatsoever was a friend, Mitram. Therefore there is the poet of the third mandala of the Rigveda, called Viswamitra. Therefore people call him who is really prana breath, Viswamitra. The Devas, speech, etc., said to him, the breath, he is to be loved by all of us. Because the Devas said to him that he was to be loved, Vama, by all of them, therefore there is the poet of the fourth mandala of the Rigveda, called Vamadeva. Therefore people call him who is really prana breath, Vamadeva. He, breath, guarded all this whatsoever from evil. Because he guarded Atrayata all this whatsoever from evil, therefore there are the poets of the fifth mandala of the Rigveda, called Atraya. Therefore people call him who is really prana breath, Atraya. Second Kanda. He, breath, is likewise a Bibhradvaja, bringer of offspring. Offspring is Vaja, and he, breath, supports offspring. Because he supports it, therefore there is the poet of the sixth mandala of the Rigveda, called Bharadvaja. Therefore people call him who is really prana breath, Bharadvaja. The Devas, speech, etc., said to him, he it is who chiefly causes us to dwell on earth. because the Devas said of him that he chiefly caused them to dwell on earth. Therefore, there is the poet of the seventh mandala of the Rigveda called Vasishtha. Therefore, people call him who is really prana, breath, Vasishtha. He, breath, went forth towards all this whatsoever. Because he went forth toward all this whatsoever, therefore there are the poets of the eighth mandala of the Rigveda called the Pragathas. Therefore, people call him who is really prana, breath, the Pragathas. He, breath, purified all this whatsoever. Because he purified all this whatsoever, therefore there are the hymns and also the poets of the ninth mandala of the Rigveda called the Pavamanis. Therefore, people call him who is really prana, breath, the Pavamanis. He, breath, said, "Let me be everything whatsoever, small, Shudra, and great, Mahat." And this became the Shudra Suktas and Maha Suktas. Therefore, there were the hymns and also the poets of the 10th mandala of the Rigveda called the Shudra Suktas and Maha Suktas. Therefore, people call him who is really prana, the Shudra Suktas and Maha Suktas. He, breath, said once, "You have said what is well said, Su-ukta indeed." This became a Sukta, hymn. Therefore, there are the Sukta. Therefore, people call him who is really prana, breath, Sukta. He, breath, is a Rik verse, for he did honor to all beings by entering into them. Because he did honor to all beings, therefore there was the Rik verse. Therefore, people call him who is really prana, breath, Rik. He, breath, is an Ardharka, half verse, for he did honor to all places, Ardha. Because he did honor to all places, therefore there was the Ardharka. Therefore, people call him who is really prana, breath, Ardharka. He, breath, is a Pada, word, for he got into all these beings. Because he got Padi into all these beings, therefore there was the Pada, word. Therefore people call him who is really prana, breath, Pada. He, breath, is an Akshara, syllable, for he pours out Sharathi gifts to all these beings, and without him no one can pour out Atikshararthi gifts. Therefore, there was the Akshara syllable. Therefore, people call him who is really prana, breath, Akshara. Thus, all these Rik verses, all Vedas, all sounds are one word, namely prana, breath. Let him know that prana is all Rik verses. Third Kanda. While Viswamitra was going to repeat the hymns of this day, the Mahavrata, Indra sat down near him. Viswamitra, guessing that Indra wanted food, said to him, "This, the verses of the hymn, is food," and repeated the 1000 Brihati verses. By means of this he went to the delightful home of Indra, Swarga. Indra said to him, "Rishi, thou hast come to my delightful home." Rishi, repeat a second hymn. Viswamitra, guessing that Indra wanted food, said to him, "This, the verses of the hymn, is food," and repeated the 1000 Brihati verses. By means of this he went to the delightful home of Indra, Swarga. Indra said to him, "Rishi, thou hast come to my delightful home." Rishi, repeat a third hymn. Vishwamitra, guessing that Indra wanted food, said to him, "This, the verses of the hymn, is food," and repeated the third Brihati verses. By means of this, he went to the delightful home of Indra, Swarga. Indra said to him, "Rishi, thou hast come to my delightful home. I grant thee a boon." Vishwamitra said, "May I know thee?" Indra said, "I am Prana. O Rishi, thou art Prana. All things are Prana. For it is Prana who shines as the sun, and I here pervade all regions under that form. This food of mine, the hymn, is my friend and my support, Dakshina. This is the food prepared by Viswamitra. I am verily he who shines the sun." Fourth Kanda. This then becomes perfect as 1,000 of Brihati verses. Its consonants form its body, its voice, vowels, the soul, its sibilants, the air of the breath. He who knows this became Vishvata. He took this name from thence. Indra verily declared this to Vishwamitra, and Indra verily declared this to Bharadvaja. Therefore, Indra is invoked by him as a friend. This becomes perfect as 1,000 of Brihati verses, and of that hymn perfect with 1,000 Brihati verses, there are 36,000 syllables. So many are also the thousands of days of 100 years, 36,000. With the consonants they fill the nights, with the vowels the day. This becomes perfect as 1,000 of Brihati verses. He who knows this, after this 1,000 of Brihatis, thus accomplished, becomes full of knowledge, full of the gods, full of Brahman, full of the immortal, and then goes also to the gods. What I am, the worshipper, that is he, Sun. What he is, that am I. This has been said by a Rishi. The Sun is the self of all that moves and rests. Let him look to that. Let him look to that. Third Adhyaya, First Kanda. He who knows himself as the fivefold hymn, Ukta, the emblem of prana, breath, from whence all this springs, he is clever. These five are the earth, air, ether, water, and fire, Jyotis. This is the self, the fivefold Ukta. For from him all this springs, and into him it enters again, at the dissolution of the world. He who knows this becomes the refuge of his friends. And to him who knows the food object and the feeder subject in that Ukta, a strong sun is born, and food is never wanting. Water and earth are food, for all food consists of these two. Fire and air are the feeder, for by means of them man eats all food. Ether is the bowl, for all this is poured into the ether. He who knows this becomes the bowl or support of his friends. To him who knows the food and the feeder in that Ukta, a strong sun is born, and food is never wanting. Herbs and trees are food, animals the feeder, for animals eat herbs and trees. Of them again, those who have teeth above and below, shaped after the likeness of man, are feeders. The other animals are food. Therefore, these overcome the other animals, for the eater is over the food. He who knows this is over his friends. Second Kanda. He who knows the gradual development of the self in him, the man conceived as the Ukta, obtains himself more development. There are herbs and trees and all that is animated, and he knows the self gradually developing in them. For in herbs and trees sap only is seen, but thought, chitta, in animated beings. Among animated beings again the self develops gradually, for in some sap blood is seen as well as thought, but in others thought is not seen. And in man again the self develops gradually, for he is most endowed with knowledge. He says what he has known, he sees what he has known, he knows what is to happen tomorrow, he knows heaven and hell. By means of the mortal he desires the immortal. Thus is he endowed. With regard to the other animals, hunger and thirst only are a kind of understanding. But they do not say what they have known, nor do they see what they have known. They do not know what is to happen tomorrow, nor heaven and hell. They go so far and no further, for they are born according to their knowledge in a former life. Third Kanda. That man, conceived as Ukta, is the sea, rising beyond the whole world. Whatever he reaches, he wishes to go beyond. If he reaches the sky, he wishes to go beyond. If he should reach that heavenly world, he would wish to go beyond. That man is fivefold. The heat in him is fire. The apertures of the senses or ether, blood, mucus, and seed or water. The body is earth. Breath is air. That air is fivefold, namely, up breathing, down breathing, back breathing, out breathing, on breathing. The other powers, devatas, namely, sight, hearing, mind, and speech, are comprised under up breathing and down breathing. For when breath departs, they also depart with it. That man, conceived as Ukta, is the sacrifice, which is a succession now of speech and now of thought. That sacrifice is fivefold, namely, the Agnihotra, the new and full moon sacrifices, the 4 monthly sacrifices, the animal sacrifice, the Soma sacrifice. The Soma sacrifice is the most perfect of sacrifices, for in it these 5 kinds of ceremonies are seen. The first, which precedes the libations, the Diksha, etc., then 3 libations, and what follows, the Avabrita, etc., is the 5th. Fourth Kanda. He who knows one sacrifice above another, one day above another, one deity above the others, he is clever. Now this great Ukta, the Nishkevalya Sastra, is the sacrifice above another, the day above another, the deity above others. This Ukta is fivefold. With regard to its being performed as a stoma chorus, it is Trivrith, Pankadasa, Saptadasa, Ekavimsa, and Pankavimsa. With regard to its being performed as a Saman song, it is Gayatra, Ratantara, Brihat, Bhadra, and Rajana. With regard to meter, it is Gayatri, Ushni, Brihati, Tristub, and Davipada. And the explanation given before in the Aryanka is that it is the head, the right wing, the left wing, the tail, and the body of the bird.
This is the first round. He then sings the 3 middle verses in each hymn. This is the second round. He lastly sings the last 3 verses in each hymn. This is the third round. This song is called Udyati. The Pankadasa stoma is formed out of one sukta only, consisting of 3 verses. In the first round, he sings the first verse 3 times, the second and third once. In the second round, he sings the middle verse 3 times. In the third round, he sings the last verse 3 times. This song is called Vishtuti. The Saptadasa stoma is formed in the same manner, only that in the first round he sings the first verse 3 times, in the second the middle verse 3 times, in the third round the middle and last verses 3 times. This song is called Dasa Sapta. The Ekavimsa stoma is formed in the same manner, only that in the first round he sings the last verse once, in the second the first verse once, in the third the middle verse once, while the other verses are each repeated 3 times. This song is called Sapta Saptini. The Pankavimsa stoma is formed in the same manner, only that in the first round he sings the first verse 3 times, the second 4 times, the last once. In the second round the first once, the second 3 times, the third 4 times. In the third round the first 5 times, the second once, the last 3 times. Or he sings in the third round, the first verse 4 times, the second twice, the last 3 times. Sayana in his commentary on the Aitareya-Āraṇyaka takes the Trivert stoma to be formed out of 3 hymns, each consisting of 3 verses, while he says that the other stomas are formed out of 1 hymn only. B and RSV Trivert state that this stoma consists of verses 1, 4, 7, 2, 5, 8, and 3, 6, 9 of the Rigveda hymn 9, 11. But according to Sayana, the stoma consists 1 of the first verses of the 3 suktas, Upasmai Gayata, Davidyutatya, and Pavamanasya at the beginning of the Samaveda Uttararkika, 2 of the second 3 of the third verses of the same 3 hymns. Mahidhara, Eva X 9, takes the same view, though the MSS seem to have left out the description of the second pariyaya, while Sayana in his commentary to the Tandya Brahmana seems to support the opinion of B and R. There is an omission, however, in the printed text of the commentary, which makes it difficult to see the exact meaning of Sayana. The Pankadasa stoma is well described by Sayana, Tandya Brahmana, 2nd 4, taking the Sukta Agna Ayahi, Uttararchika 1st 1-4 equals Rigveda 6th, 16 10 12. He shows the stoma to consist of 1, verse 1 x 3, 2 3 2, verse 1 2 x 3 3, 3 verse 1 2 3 x 3. The 5 samans are explained by the commentator. The Gayatra is formed out of the rc, 3rd 62 10, Tat Savitur Varenyam. The Rathantara is formed out of the ark, 7th 32 22, Abhi Tiva Sura Nonuma. The Brat is formed out of the ark, 6th 46 1, Tivamaidi Di Havamahe. The Padra is formed out of the ark, 10th 57 1, Ima Nukam. The Rajana is formed out of the ark, 7th 27 1, Indram Naro Nemadita. The meters require no explanation. In identifying certain portions of the Nishkavalya hymn with a bird, the head of the bird corresponds to the hymns Indram Edi Gathina, etc., the right wing to the hymns Abhi Tvasura, etc., the left wing to the hymns Tavam Edd, etc., the tail to the hymns Imanukam, etc., the body to the hymns Tad Id Asa, etc. All this was explained in the first Aranyaka.
He performs the Prastava in 5 ways. He performs the Udgita in 5 ways. He performs the Pratihara in 5 ways. He performs the Ubhadrava in 5 ways. He performs the Nidhana in 5 ways. All this together forms 1000 stobas or musical syllables. Thus also are the Rig verses contained in the Nishkevalya recited by the Hotri in 5 orders. What precedes the 80 trikas, that is 1 order. Then follow the 3 sets of 80 trikas each, and what comes after is the 5th order. The hymns of this Shastra as a whole, if properly counted with the Stoba syllables, comes to 1000 of Brihati verses. That 1000 is the whole, and 10 is called the whole. For number is such, measured by 10. 10 tens or 100, 10 hundreds or 1,000, and that is the whole. These are the 3 meters, the tens pervading everything. And this food also, the 3 sets of hymns being represented as food, is threefold: eating, drinking, and chewing. He obtains that food by those 3 numbers, 10, 100, and 1000, or by the 3 sets of 80 trikas. 5th Kanda. This Nishkevalya Shastra becomes perfect as 1000 of Brihati verses. Some teachers belonging to a different shaka recognize 1000 of different meters, not of Brihatis only. They say, is another 1000, 1000 of other verses good? Let us say it is good. Some say 1000 of Trishtub verses, others 1000 of Gakati verses, others 1000 of Anushtub verses. This has been said by a rishi. Poets, through their understanding, discovered Indra dancing an Anushtub. This is meant to say, they discovered and meditated in speech called Anushtub at that time when they worshipped the Ukta, the prana, breath, connected with Indra. He who takes the recited verses as Anushtubs is able to become celebrated and of good report. No, he says, rather this is such a man liable to die before his time. For that self consisting of Anushtubs is incomplete. For if a man confines himself to speech, not to breath, then driven by his mind, he does not succeed with speech. Let him work towards the Brihati, for the Brihati, breath, is the complete self. That self, Jivatman, is surrounded on all sides by members. And as that self is on all sides surrounded by members, the Brihati also is on all sides surrounded by meters. For the self in the heart is the middle of these members, and the Brihati is the middle of the meters. He is able to become celebrated and of good report, but the other able to die before his time. Thus he said, for the Brihati is the complete self. Therefore, let him work towards the Brihati. Let him reckon the Shastra recitation as 1000 Brihatis. 6th Kanda. This Nishkevalya Shastra becomes perfect as 1000 of Brihati verses. In this 1000 of Brihatis, there are 1125 Anushtubs, for the smaller is contained in the larger. This has been said by a rishi. A speech of 8 feet, because there are 8 feet of 4 syllables each in the Anushtubh, of 9 corners, because the Brihati becomes 9-cornered, having 9 feet of 4 syllables each. Touching the truth, because speech, Anushtubh, is truth, touched by the verse Brihati. He, the Hotri, makes the body out of Indra, for out of this 1,000 of Brihati verses turned into Anushtubhs, and therefore out of Prana as connected with Indra, and out of Brihati, which is Prana, he makes speech, that is Anushtubh, as a body. This Mahadukta is the highest development of speech, and it is 5-fold, namely measured, not measured, music, true and untrue. A Rig verse, a Gatha, a Kumbhya or measured metrical, a Yajus line, an invocation, and general remarks, these are not measured, they are in prose. A sermon or any portion, parvan of it, is music. Om is true, Na is untrue. What is true Om is the flower and fruit of speech. He is able to become celebrated and of good report, for he speaks of the true Om, the flower and fruit of speech. Now the untrue is the root of speech, and as a tree whose root is exposed dries up and perishes, thus a man who says what is untrue exposes his root, dries up and perishes. Therefore, one should not say what is untrue, but guard oneself from it. That syllable, Om, yes, goes forward to the first cause of the world and is empty. Therefore, if a man says Om, yes, to everything, then that which he gives away is wanting to him here. If he says Om, yes, to everything, then he would empty himself and would not be capable of any enjoyments. That syllable, Na, no, is full for oneself. If a man says no to everything, then his reputation would become evil, and that would ruin him even here. Therefore, let a man give at the proper time only, not at the wrong time. Thus he unites the true and the untrue, and from the union of those two he grows and becomes greater and greater. He who knows the speech of which this, the Mahadukta, is a development, he is clever. A is the whole of speech and manifested through different kinds of contact, mutes, and of wind, sibilants. It becomes manifold and different. Speech, if uttered in a whisper, is breath. If spoken aloud, it is body. Therefore, if whispered, it is almost hidden. For what is incorporeal is almost hidden, and breath is incorporeal. But if spoken aloud, it is body, and therefore it is perceptible, for body is perceptible. 7th Kanda. This Nikshavalya Sastra becomes perfect as 1,000 of Brihatis. It is glory, the glorious Brahman, not the absolute Brahman. It is Indra. Indra is the Lord of all beings. He who thus knows Indra as the Lord of all beings departs from this world by loosening the bonds of life. So said Mahidasa Aitareya. Having departed, he becomes Indra or Hiranyagarbha and shines in those worlds. And with regard to this, they say, If a man obtains the other world in this form by meditating on the prana, breath, which is the ukta, the hymn of the Mahabharata, then in what form does he obtain this world? Here the blood of the woman is a form of Agni, fire. Therefore no one should despise it. And the seed of the man is a form of Aditya, sun. Therefore no one should despise it. This self, the woman, gives herself, skin, blood, and flesh to that self, fat, bone, and marrow. And that self, man, gives his self, fat, bone, and marrow to this self, skin, blood, and flesh. Thus these two grow together. In this form, belonging to the woman and to fire, he goes to that world belonging to the man and the sun. And in that form, belonging to man and the sun, he goes to this world belonging to the woman and to fire. 8th Kanda. Here, with regard to obtaining Hiranyagarbha, there are these slokas. The fivefold body into which the indestructible prana breath enters, that body which the harnessed horses, the senses, draw about, that body where the true of the true, the highest Brahman, follows after, in that body of the worshipper all gods become one. That body into which goes the indestructible, the breath, which we have joined in meditation, proceeding from the indestructible, the highest Brahman, that body which the harnessed horses, the senses, draw about, that body where the true of the true follows after, in that body all gods become one. After separating themselves from the yes and no of language, and of all that is hard and cruel, poets have discovered what they sought for. Dependent on names, they rejoiced in what had been revealed. That in which the poets rejoiced, the revealed nature of prana, breath, in it the gods exist all joined together. Having driven away evil by means of that Brahman which is hidden in prana, the enlightened man goes to the Swarga world, becomes one with Hiranyagarbha, the universal spirit. No one wishing to describe him prana, breath, by speech, describes him by calling him woman, neither woman nor man, or man, all such names applying only to the material body and not to prana or breath. Brahman, as hidden beneath prana, is called the A, and the I, ego, is gone there. The worshipper should know that he is ukta and prana. This becomes perfect as 1,000 of Brihati verses, and of that hymn, perfect with 1,000 Brihati verses, there are 36,000 syllables. So many are also the thousands of days of human life. By means of the syllable of life, the A alone, which is contained in that 1,000 of hymns, does a man obtain the day of life. The Mahabharata day, which completes the number of the days in the Gavamanya sacrifice, and by means of the day of life he obtains the syllable of life. Now there is a chariot of the god, prana, destroying all desires. For the worlds of Indra, the moon, the earth, all of which lie below the place of Hiranyagarbha, its front part, the point of the two shafts of the carriage where the yoke is fastened, is speech, its wheels the ears, the horses the eyes, the driver the mind, Prana breath mounts that chariot, and on it, that is, by means of meditating on prana, he reaches Hiranyagarbha. This has been said by a rishi. Come hither on that which is quicker than mind, and come hither on that which is quicker than the twinkling of an eye. Yeah, the twinkling of an eye. Fourth Adhyaya. First Kanda.
With this, adhyaya begins the real Upanishad, best known under the name of the Aitareya Upanishad, and often separately edited, commented on, and translated. If treated separately, what we call the fourth adhyaya of the second Aranyaka becomes the first adhyaya of the Upanishad. Sometimes also, by counting all adhyaya from the beginning of the Aitareya-Āraṇyaka, the ninth. The divisions adopted by Sayana, who explains the Upanishad as part of the Aranyaka, and by Sankara, who explains it independently, vary, though Sayana states that he follows in his commentary on the Upanishad the earlier commentary of Sankara. I have given the divisions adopted by Sayana and have marked those of Sankara's by figures in parentheses, placed at the end of each paragraph. The difference between this Upanishad and the three preceding adhyayas is easily perceived. Hitherto the answer to the question, whence this world, had been from prana, prana meaning breath and life, which was looked upon for a time as a sufficient explanation of all that is. From a psychological point of view, this prana is the conscious self, prajnatman. In a more mythological form, it appears as Hiranyagarbha, the golden germ, sometimes even as Indra. It is one of the chief objects of the prana-vidya, or life knowledge, to show that the living principle in us is the same as the living principle in the sun, and that by a recognition of their identity and of the true nature of prana, the devotee, or he who has rightly meditated on prana during his life, enters after death into the world of Hiranyagarbha. This is well expressed in the Kaushitaki Upanishad 3rd 2, where Indra says to Pratardana, I am prana. Meditate on me as the conscious self, prajnatman, as life, as immortality. Life is prana, prana is life. Immortality is prana, prana is immortality. By prana he obtains immortality in the other world, by knowledge, prajna, true conception. Prana is consciousness, prajna, consciousness is prana. This, however, though it may have satisfied the mind of the Brahmans for a time, was not a final solution. That final solution of the problem not simply of life but of existence is given in the Upanishad, which teaches that Atman, the self, and not prana, life, is the last and only cause of everything. In some places, this doctrine is laid down in all its simplicity. Our true self, it is said, has its true being in the highest self only. In other passages, however, and nearly in the whole of this Upanishad, this simple doctrine is mixed up with much that is mythological, fanciful, and absurd, arthavada, as the commentators call it, but as it might often be more truly called anarthavada. And it is only towards the end that the identity of the self-conscious self with the highest self or Brahman is clearly enunciated.
Adoration to the highest self. Hari Om. Verily, in the beginning, all this was self. One only. There was nothing else, blinking whatsoever. He thought, shall I send forth worlds? He sent forth these worlds. Ambas, water. Marichi, light. Mara, mortal. and up, water. That Amba's water is above the heaven, and it is heaven the support. The Marichis, the lights or the sky. The Mara, mortal, is the earth, and the waters under the earth are the app world. He thought, there are these worlds. Shall I send forth guardians of the worlds? He then formed the Purusha, the person, taking him forth from the water. He brooded on him, and when that person had thus been brooded on, a mouth burst forth like an egg. From the mouth proceeded speech. From speech, Agni, fire. Nostrils burst forth. From the nostrils proceeded scent, prana. From scent, vayu, air. Eyes burst forth. From the eyes proceeded sight. From sight, aditya, sun. Ears burst forth. From the ears proceeded hearing. From hearing, the dis, quarters of the world. Skin burst forth. From the skin proceeded hairs, sense of touch. From the hairs, shrubs and trees. The heart burst forth. From the heart proceeded mind. From mind, Chandramas, moon. The navel burst forth. From the navel proceeded the apana, the down breathing. From apana, death. The generative organ burst forth. From the organ proceeded seed. From seed, water. Second Kanda. Those deities, Devata, Agni and the rest, after they had been sent forth, fell into this great ocean. Then he, the self, besieged him, the person, with hunger and thirst. The deities, then tormented by hunger and thirst, spoke to him, the self, allow us a place in which we may rest and eat food. He led a cow towards them, the deities. They said, this is not enough. He led a horse towards them. They said, this is not enough. He led man towards them. Then they said, well done indeed. Therefore man is well done. He said to them, enter each according to his place. Then Agni, fire, having become speech, entered the mouth. Vayu, air, having become scent, entered the nostrils. Aditya, sun, having become sight, entered the eyes. The dis, regions, having become hearing, entered the ears. The shrubs and trees, having become hairs, entered the skin. Chandramas, the moon, having become mind, entered the heart. Death, having become down-breathing, entered the navel. The waters, having become seed, entered the generative organ. Then hunger and thirst spoke to him, the self. Allow us to a place. He said to them, I assign you to those very deities there. I make you co-partners with them. Therefore, to whatever deity an oblation is offered, hunger and thirst are co-partners in it. Third Kanda. He thought, there are these worlds and the guardians of the worlds. Let me send forth food for them. He brooded over the water. From the water, thus brooded on, matter, Murti, was born. And that matter which was born, that verily was food. When this food, the object matter, had thus been sent forth, it wished to flee, crying and turning away. He, the subject, tried to grasp it by speech. He could not grasp it by speech. If he had grasped it by speech, man would be satisfied by naming food. He tried to grasp it by scent, breath. He could not grasp it by scent. If he had grasped it by scent, man would be satisfied by smelling food. He tried to grasp it by the eye. He could not grasp it by the eye. If he had grasped it by the eye, man would be satisfied by seeing food. He tried to grasp it by the ear. He could not grasp it by the ear. If he had grasped it by the ear, man would be satisfied by hearing food. He tried to grasp it by the skin. He could not grasp it by the skin. If he had grasped it by the skin, man would be satisfied by touching food. He tried to grasp it by the mind. He could not grasp it by the mind. If he had grasped it by the mind, man would be satisfied by thinking food. He tried to grasp it by the generative organ. He could not grasp it by the organ. If he had grasped it by the organ, man would be satisfied by sending forth food. He tried to grasp it by the down-breathing, the breath which helps to swallow food through the mouth and to carry it off through the rectum, the Pavindriya. He got it. Thus it is Vayu, the getter, who lays hold of food, and the Vayu is verily Annayu, he who gives life or who lives by food. He thought, how can all this be without me? And then he thought, by what way shall I get there? And then he thought, if speech names, if scent smells, if the eye sees, if the ear hears, if the skin feels, if the mind thinks, if the off-breathing digests, if the organ sends forth, then what am I? Then, opening the suture of the skull, he got in by that door. That door is called the Vidriti, tearing asunder, the Nandana, the place of bliss. There are 3 dwelling places for him, 3 dreams. This dwelling place, the eye; this dwelling place, the throat; this dwelling place, the heart. When born, when the highest self had entered the body, he looked through all things, in order to see whether anything wished to proclaim here another self. He saw this person only, himself, as the widely spread Brahman. I saw it, thus he said. Therefore he was Idamdra, seeing this. Being Idamdra by name, they call him Indra mysteriously, for the Devas love mystery. Yeah, they love mystery. 5th Adhyaya, 1st Kanda. Let the woman who are with child move away. Verily, from the beginning, he, the self, is in man as a germ, which is called seed. This seed, which is strength gathered from all the limbs of the body, he, the man, bears as self in his self body. When he commits the seed to the woman, then he, the father, causes it to be born. That is the first birth. That seed becomes the self of the woman, as if one of her own limbs. Therefore, it does not injure her. She nourishes her husband's self, the son within her. She who nourishes is to be nourished. The woman bears the germ. He, the father, elevates the child even before the birth and immediately after. When he thus elevates the child both before and after his birth, he really elevates his own self. For the continuation of these worlds, men, for thus are these worlds continued. This is his second birth. He, the son, bearing his self, is then placed in his stead for the performance of all good works. But his other self, the father, having done all he has to do, and having reached the full measure of his life, departs. After departing from hence, he is born again. That is his third birth. And this has been declared by a rishi. While dwelling in the womb, I discovered all the births of these devas. 100 iron strongholds kept me, but I escaped quickly, down like a falcon. Vamadeva, lying in the womb, has thus declared this. And having this knowledge, he stepped forth after this dissolution of the body, and having obtained all his desires in that heavenly world, became immortal. Yeah, he became immortal. 6th Adhyaya, 1st Kanda. Let the woman go back to their place. Who is he whom we meditate on as the self? Which is the self? That by which we see form, that by which we hear sound, that by which we perceive smells, that by which we utter speech, that by which we distinguish sweet and not sweet, and what comes from the heart and the mind, namely perception, command, understanding, knowledge, wisdom, seeing, holding, thinking, considering, readiness or suffering, remembering, conceiving, willing, breathing, loving, desiring?
4. No, all these are various names only of knowledge, the true self. 2.
And that self, consisting of knowledge, is Brahman. It is Indra. It is Prajapati. All these devas, these 5 great elements, earth, air, ether, water, fire, these and those which are, as it were, small and mixed, and seeds of this kind and that kind, born from eggs, born from the womb, born from heat, born from germs, horses, cows, men, elephants, and whatsoever breeds, whether walking or flying, and what is immovable, all that is led, produced by knowledge, the self. It rests on knowledge, the self. The world is led, produced by knowledge, the self. Knowledge is its cause. Knowledge is Brahman. He, Vamadeva, having by this conscious self stepped forth from this world, and having obtained all desires in that heavenly world, became immortal. Yeah, he became immortal. Thus it is. Om. 7th Adhyaya, 1st Kanda. My speech rests in the mind. My mind rests in speech. Appear to me, thou the highest self. You, speech and mind, are the 2 pins that hold the wheels of the Veda. May what I have learnt not forsake me. I join day and night with what I have learnt. I shall speak of the real. I shall speak the true. May this protect me. May this protect the teacher. May it protect me. May it protect the teacher. Yeah, the teacher. 3rd Aranyaka, 1st Adhyaya, 1st Kanda. Next follows the Upanishad of the Samhita. The former half is the earth, the latter half the heaven. Their union, the air. Thus says Mandukya. Their union is the ether. Thus did Makshavya teach it. That air is not considered independent. Therefore, I do not agree with his Manduka's son.
4. Verily the 2 are the same. Therefore air is considered independent, thus says Agastya. For it is the same whether they say air or ether. 5. So far with reference to deities, mythologically. Now with reference to the body, physiologically.
The former half is speech. The latter half is mind. Their union, breath, prana. Thus says Suravira Mandukya. But his eldest son said, the former half is mind, the latter half speech. For we first conceive with the mind indeed, and then we utter with speech. Therefore the former half is indeed mind, the latter half speech, but their union is really breath. Verily, it is the same with both, the father Mandukya and the son. This meditation, as here described, joined with mind, speech and breath, is like a chariot drawn by 2 horses, and one horse between them, Prashtivahana. And he who thus knows this union becomes united with offspring, cattle, fame, glory of countenance, and the world of Swarga. He lives his full age. Now all this comes from the Mandukyas, second Kanda. Next comes the meditation as taught by Shakala. The first half is the earth, the second half heaven. They are uniting the rain, the uniter Parjanya. And so it is when he, Parjanya, reigns thus strongly without ceasing day and night. Then they also say in ordinary language, heaven and earth have come together. So much with regard to the deities. Now with regard to the body. Every man is indeed like an egg. There are two halves of him. Thus they say, this half is the earth, that half heaven. And there between them is the ether, the space of the mouth, like the ether between heaven and earth. In this ether, there in the mouth the breath is fixed, as in that other ether the air is fixed. And as there are those three luminaries in heaven, there are these three luminaries in man. As there is that sun in heaven, there is this eye in the head. As there is that lightning in the sky, there is this heart in the body. As there is that fire on earth, there is this seed in the member. Having thus represented the self, body, as the whole world, Shakala said, this half is the earth, that half heaven. He who thus knows this union becomes united with offspring, cattle, fame, glory of countenance, and the world of Swarga. He lives his full age. Third Kanda. Next comes the reciters of the Nirbhuja. Nirbhuja abides on earth, Pratrina in heaven, the Ubhayamantrena in the sky. Now if anyone should chide him who recites the Nirbhuja, let him answer, thou art fallen from the two lower places. If anyone should chide him who recites the Pratrina, let him answer, thou art fallen from the two higher places. But he who recites the Ubhayamantrena, there is no chiding him. For when he turns out the Sandhi, the union of words, that is the form of Nirbhuja. And when he pronounces two syllables, pure, without modification, that is the form of Pratrina. This comes first. By the Udayamantrana, what is between the two, both are fulfilled, both the Sandhi and the Pada. Let him who wishes for proper food say the Nirbhuja. Let him who wishes for Swarga say the Patrina. Let him who wishes for both say the Ubhayamantrena. Now if another man, an enemy, should chide him who says the Nirbhuja, let him say to him, thou hast offended the earth, the deity, the earth, the deity will strike thee. If another man should chide him who says the Pratrina, let him say to him, thou hast offended heaven, the deity, heaven, the deity will strike thee. If another man should chide him who says the Ubhayamantrena, Let him say to him, Thou hast offended the sky, the deity. The sky, the deity, will strike thee. And whatever the reciter shall say to one who speaks to him or does not speak to him, depend upon it, it will come to pass. But to a Brahmana, let him not say anything except what is auspicious. Only he may curse a Brahmana in excessive wealth. Nay, not even in excessive wealth should he curse a Brahmana, but he should say, I bow before Brahmanas. Thus says Suravira Mandukya. Fourth Kanda. Next follows the imprecations. Let him know that breath is the beam on which the whole house of the body rests. If anyone, a Brahmana or another man, should chide him, who by meditation has become that breath as beam, then if he thinks himself strong, he says, I grasped the breath, the beam, well. Thou dost not prevail against me, who have grasped the breath as the beam. Let him say to him, Breath, the beam, will forsake thee. But if he thinks himself not strong, let him say to him, Thou couldst not grasp him who wishes to grasp the breath as the beam. Breath, the beam, will forsake thee. And whatever the reciter shall say to one who speaks to him or does not speak to him, depend upon it, it will come to pass. But to a Brahmana let him not say anything except what is auspicious. Only he may curse a Brahmana in excessive wealth. Nay, not even in excessive wealth should he curse a Brahmana, but he should say, I bow before Brahmanas. Thus says Suravira Mandukya. Fifth Kanda. Now those who repeat the Nirbhuja say, the former half is the first syllable, the latter half the second syllable, and the space between the first and second halves is the Samhita union. He who thus knows this Samhita union becomes united with offspring, cattle, fame, glory of countenance, and the world of Swarga. He lives his full age. Now Hrasvamandukya says, we reciters of Nirbhuja say, yes, the former half is the first syllable and the latter half the second syllable. But the Samhita is the space between the first and second halves, insofar as by it one turns out the union sandhi and knows what is the accent and what is not, and distinguishes what is the mora and what is not. He who thus knows this Samhita union becomes united with offspring, cattle, fame, glory of countenance, and the world of Swarga. He lives his full age. Now his middle son, the child of his mother Pratibodhi, says, one pronounces these two syllables letter by letter, without entirely separating them, and without entirely uniting them. Then that mora between the first and second halves, which indicates the union, that is the Saman, evenness sliding. I therefore hold Saman only to be the Samhita union. This has also been declared by Rishi. O Brihaspati, they know nothing higher than Saman. He who thus knows the Samhita union becomes united with offspring, cattle, fame, glory of countenance, and the world of Swarga. He lives his full age. Sixth Kanda. Tarukshya said, the Samhita union is formed by means of the Brihat and Ratantara summons. Verily, the Ratantara summon is speech, the Brihat summon is breath. By both, by speech and breath, the Samhita is formed. For this Upanishad, for acquiring from his teacher the knowledge of this Samhita of speech and breath, Taruksha guards his teacher's cows a whole year. For it alone, Taruksha guards the cows a whole year. This has also been declared by a rishi. Vasishta carried hither the Ratantara. Bharadwaja brought hither the Brihat of Agni. He who thus knows this Samhiti union becomes united with offspring, cattle, fame, glory of countenance, and the world of Swarga. He lives his full age. Kauntaravya said, speech is united with breath, breath with the blowing air, the blowing air with the Visvadevas, the Visvadevas with the heavenly world, the heavenly world with Brahman. That Samhita is called the gradual Samhita. He who knows this gradual Samhita union becomes united with offspring, cattle, fame, glory of countenance, and the world of Swarga in exactly the same manner as this Samhita, that is, gradually. If that worshipper, whether for his own sake or for that of another, recites the Samhita, let him know when he is going to recite that this Samhita went up to heaven, and that it will be even so with those who by knowing it become Devas. May it always be so. He who thus knows this Samhita union becomes united with offspring, cattle, fame, glory of countenance, and the world of Swarga. He lives his full age. Panchala Chanda said, the Samhita union composition is speech. Verily, by speech the Vedas, by speech the meters are composed. Friends unite through speech. All beings unite through speech. Therefore, speech is everything here. With regard to this view of speech being more than breath, it should be borne in mind that when we thus repeat the Veda or speak, breath is absorbed in speech, speech swallows breath. And when we are silent or sleep, speech is absorbed in breath, breath swallows speech. The two swallow each other. Verily, speech is the mother, breath the son. This has been declared also by a rishi. There is one bird, as wind he has entered the sky, as breath or living soul. He saw this whole world. With my ripe mind I saw him close to me in the heart. The mother licks or absorbs him, breath, and he absorbs the mother, speech. He who thus knows this Samhita union becomes united with offspring, cattle, fame, glory of countenance, and the world of Swarga. He lives his full age. Next follows the Prajapati Samhita. The former half is the wife, the latter half the man, the result of the union the son, the act of the union the begetting. That Samhita is Aditi, indestructible. For Aditi, indestructible, is all this whatever there is, father, mother, son, and begetting. This has also been declared by a rishi. Aditi is mother, is father, is son. He who thus knows this Samhita union becomes united with offspring, cattle, fame, glory of countenance, and the world of Swarga. He lives his full age. Second Adhyaya, First Kanda. Stavira Sakalya said that breath is the beam, and as the other beams rest on the house beam, thus the eye, the ear, the mind, the speech, the senses, the body, the whole self rests on this breath. Of that self, the breathing is like the sibilants, the bones like the mutes, the marrow like the vowels, and the fourth part, flesh, blood, and the rest like the semi-vowels. So said Harsamandukya. To us it was said to be a triad only. Of that triad, namely, bones, marrow, and joints, there are 360 parts on this side, the right, and 360 on that side, the left. They make 720 together, and 720 are the days and nights of the year. Thus, that self which consists of sight, hearing, meter, mind, and speech is like unto the days. He who thus knows this self, which consists of sight, hearing, meter, mind, and speech, as like unto the days, obtains union, likeness, or nearness with the days, has sons and cattle, and lives his full age. Second Kanda. Next comes Kuntaravya. There are 360 syllables, vowels, 360 sibilants, consonants, 360 groups. What we call syllables are the days, what we call sibilants are the nights, what we called groups are the junctions of days and nights. So far with regard to the gods, the days. Now with regard to the body, the syllables which we explained mythologically or physiologically, the bones, the sibilants which we explained mythologically or physiologically, the marrow. Marrow is the real breath, life, for marrow is seed, and without breath, life seed is not sown, or when it is sown without breath, life, it will decay, it will not grow. The groups which we explained mythologically or physiologically, the joints. Of that triad, namely bones, marrows, and joints, there are 540 parts on this side, the right, and 540 on that side, the left. They make 1080 together, and 1080 are the rays of the sun. They make the Brihati verses and the day of the Mahavrata. Thus, that self which consists of sight, hearing, meter, mind, and speech is like unto these syllables. He who knows this self which consists of sight, hearing, meter, mind, and speech as like unto syllables obtains union, likeness, or nearness with the syllables, has sons and cattle, and lives his full age. Third Kanda. Bhadva says, there are 4 persons to be meditated on and worshipped. The person of the body, the person of the meters, the person of the Veda, and the great person. What we call the person of the body is this corporal self. Its essence is the incorporeal conscious self. What we call the person of the meters is this collection of letters, the Veda. Its essence is the vowel A. What we call the person of the Veda is the mind, by which we know the Vedas, the Rigveda, Yajurveda, and Samaveda. Its essence is Brahman. Therefore, let one choose a Brahman priest who is full of Brahman, the Veda, and is able to see any flaw in the sacrifice. What we call the great person is the ear, which causes some beings to fall altogether and causes others to grow up. Its essence is yonder sun. One should know that the incorporeal conscious self and yonder sun are both one and the same. Therefore, the sun appears to every man singly and differently. This has also been declared by a rishi. The bright face of the gods arose, the eye of Mitra, Varuna, and Agni. It filled heaven and earth and the sky. The sun is the self of all that rests and moves. This I think to be the regular Samhita as conceived by me. Thus said Bhadva. So the Bhavrikas consider him the self in the great hymn Mahad Ukta, the Adhyayas in the sacrificial fire, the Chandogas in the Mahavrata ceremony. Him they see in this earth, in heaven, in the air, in the ether, in the water, in herbs, in trees, in the moon, in the stars, in all beings. Him alone they call Brahman. That self which consists of sight, hearing, meter, mind, and speech is like unto the ear. He who recites to another that self which consists of sight, hearing, meter, mind, and speech, and is like unto the ear, fourth Kanda, to him the Vedas yield no more milk. He has no luck in what he has learnt from his Guru. He does not know the path of virtue. This has also been declared by a rishi. He who has forsaken the friend, the Veda, that knows his friends in his speech, there is no luck. Though he hears in vain, for he does not know the path of virtue. Here it is clearly said that he has no luck in what he has learnt, and that he does not know the path of virtue. Therefore, let no one who knows this lay the sacrificial fire belonging to the Mahavrata for another. Let him not sing the sermons of the Mahavrata for another. Let him not recite the Shastras of that day for another. However, let him willingly do this for a father or for an Akraya, for that is done really for himself. We have said that the incorporeal conscious self and the sun are one. When these two become separated, the sun is seen as if it were the moon. No rays spring from it. The sky is red like madder. The patient cannot retain the wind. His head smells bad like a raven's nest. Let him know, then, that his self in the body is gone, and that he will not live very long. Then whatever he thinks he has to do, let him do it, and let him recite the following hymns. Yad anti yakka durake ad it pratnasya retasa yatra brahma pavamana udvyam tamasas pari. Next, when the sun is seen pierced, and seems like the nave of a cartwheel, when he sees his own shadow pierced, let him know then that it is so, as stated before, that is, that he is going to die soon. Next, when he sees himself in a mirror, or in the water with a crooked head, or without a head, or when his pupils are seen inverted or not straight, let him know then that it is so. Next, let him cover his eyes and watch, then threads are seen as if falling together. But if he does not see them, let him know then that it is so. Next, let him cover his ears and listen, and there will be a sound as if a burning fire or of a carriage. But if he does not hear it, let him know then that it is so. Next, when fire looks blue like the neck of a peacock, or when he sees lightning in a cloudless sky, or no lightning in a clouded sky, or when he sees, as it were, bright rays in the dark cloud, let him know then that it is so. Next, when he sees the ground as if it were burning, let him know that it is so. These are the visible signs. Next come the dreams. If he sees a black man with black teeth, and that man kills him, or a boar kills him, a monkey jumps on him, the wind carries him along quickly, having swallowed gold, he spits it out, he eats honey, he chews stalks, he carries a red lotus, he drives with asses and boars, wearing a wreath of red flowers, Naladas, he drives a black cow with a black calf, facing the south. If a man sees any one of these dreams, let him fast and cook a pot of milk, sacrifice it, accompanying each oblation with a verse of the Ratri hymn, and then, after having fed the Brahmanas with other food prepared at his house, eat himself the rest of the oblation. Let him know that the person within all beings, not heard here, not reached, not thought, not subdued, not seen, not understood, not classed, but hearing, thinking, seeing, classing, sounding, understanding, knowing is his self. Fifth Kanda. Now next the Upanishad of the whole speech. True, all these are Upanishads of the whole speech, but this they call so chiefly. The mute consonants represent the earth, the sibilants the sky, the vowels heaven. The mute consonants represent Agni, fire, the sibilants air, the vowels the sun. The mute consonants represent the Rigveda, the sibilants the Yajurveda, the vowels the Samaveda. The mute consonants represent the eye, the sibilants the ear, the vowels the mind. The mute consonants represent the up breathing, the sibilants the down breathing, the vowels the back breathing. Next comes this divine lute, the human body made by the gods. The lute made by man is an imitation of it. And there is a head of this, so there is a head of that lute made by man. As there is a stomach of this, so there is the cavity in the bone of that. And there is a tongue of this, so there is a tongue in that. As there are fingers of this, so there are strings of that. As there are vowels of this, so there are tones of that. As there are consonants of this, so there are touches of that. As this is endowed with sound and firmly strung, so that is endowed with sound and firmly strung. As this is covered with a hairy skin, so that is covered with a hairy skin. Verily, in former times they covered a lute with a hairy skin. He who knows this lute, made by the Devas, and meditates on it, is willingly listened to. His glory fills the earth, and wherever they speak Aryan languages, there they know him. Next follows the verse called Vagrasa, the essence of speech. When a man reciting or speaking in an assembly does not please, let him say this verse. May the queen of all speech, who is covered, as it were, by the lips, surrounded by teeth, as if by spears, who is a thunderbolt, help me to speak well. This is the Vagrasa, the essence of speech. Sixth Kanda. Next, Krishna Harita confided this Brahmana concerning speech to him, his people. Prajapati, the year after having sent forth all creatures, burst. He put himself together again by means of Kandas, Vedas. because he put himself together again by means of Kandas. Therefore, the text of the Veda is called Samhita, put together. Of that Samhita, the letter N is the strength, the letter Sh, the breath, and self, Atman. He who knows the Rig verses and the letters N and Sh for every Samhita, he knows the Samhita with strength and breath. Let him know that this is the life of the Samhita. If the pupil asks, "Shall I say it with the letter N or without it?" let the teacher say, "With the letter N." And if he asks, "Shall I say it with the letter Sh or without it?" let the teacher say, "With the letter Sh." Hraswa Mandukya said, "If we here recite the verses according to the Samhita, attending to the necessary changes of N and S into N and Sh, and if we say the adhyaya of Mandukya, then the letters N and Sh, strength and breath, have by this been obtained for us." Stavira Sakalya said, "If we recite the verses according to the Samhita, and if we say the adhyaya of Mandukya, then the letters N and Sh have by this been obtained for us." Here the rshis, the Kavashayas, knowing this, said, "Why should we repeat the Veda? Why should we sacrifice? We offer as a sacrifice breath in speech, or speech in breath. What is the beginning of one, that is the end of the other. Let no one tell these Samhitas to one who is not a resident pupil, who has not been with his teacher at least 1 year, and who is not himself to become an instructor. Thus say the teachers. Yeah, thus say the teachers.
11. And in the place where he reads this, he should not read anything else, though he may read this, the Mahabharata, where he has read something else. 12. No one should bathe and become a snataka who does not read this. Even if he has read many other things, he should not become a snataka if he has not read this. 13. Nor should he forget it, and even if he should forget anything else, he should not forget this. 14. No, he should never forget this. 15. If he does not forget this, it will be enough for himself, or for acquiring a knowledge of the self. 16. It is enough. Let him know this to be true. 17. Let him who knows this not communicate, nor dine, nor amuse himself with anyone who does not know it. 18. When the old water that stood round the roots of trees is dried up, after about the month of Pausha, January to February, he should not read, nor at any time in the morning or in the afternoon when the shadows meet. He should begin at sunrise so soon as the shadows divide, and end in the evening before they fall together. Nor should he read when a cloud has risen, and when there is an unseasonable rain after the months of Sravana and Bhadrapada, August and September. He should stop his Vedic reading for 3 nights. Nor should he at that time tell stories, not even during the night, nor should he glory in his knowledge. 19. This, the Veda thus learnt and studied, is the name of that great being, and he who thus knows the name of that great being, he becomes Brahman, yea, he becomes Brahman.